How many years have you gone without a job?
I can't say how long. It's been a long time.
Welfare reform.
By the mid-1990s, a drumbeat of media attention had convinced many Americans that people on welfare were either cheats.
With wigs and disguises, she conned welfare workers into believing she was 12 different people.
Or loafers.
Some people on welfare make more money than people that are working.
Why should we have to pay for you to sit at home, watch your soap operas?
The number of Americans receiving cash benefits had hit a record 14 million. And Republicans wanted radical change.
They create a culture of poverty and a culture of violence which is destructive of this civilization.
So how did a Democrat become the one to do away with this once sacred entitlement?
Today we are ending welfare as we know it.
And 20 years later, how are the poor doing without it?
The President of the United States signed the measure, an act to safeguard children, to help working men and women forestall poverty and want.
Created in the 1930s to help destitute widows with children, welfare had evolved into a $25 billion entitlement, serving a growing number of unwed mothers.
My mother had me when she was 16, and I had him when I was 16.
Welfare has proliferated and grown into a leviathan of unsupportable dimensions.
Republicans had been trying to overhaul welfare for decades.
I think the Republican diagnosis was accurate, that there were way too many moms on welfare. If they would get jobs, it would be better for them, and better for their kids, and better for society.
But in a political twist, it was a Democrat in 1992 who grabbed onto the issue and made it his own.
They're a new generation of Democrats, Bill Clinton and Al Gore, and they don't think the way the old Democratic Party did.
Welfare should be a second chance, not a way of life.
Bill Clinton proposed putting time limits on cash assistance and requiring recipients to go to work, an approach that appealed to
Bill Clinton was their first black president, and everything he was talking about, they talking about now, but wow. They love Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, right? They reformed welfare. They ain't get no backlash from people. The Krats. You can go back and get the history of the hypocrisy, y'all. That's why I say when you out recording, you recording history. Because you can always resort back to it and see what they was talking about.
conservative voters having doubts about the young governor from Arkansas.
During the New Hampshire primary, he was in trouble. He had maybe dated the draft a little bit. Maybe he had used marijuana, but maybe he didn't inhale.
When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
He had used marijuana, but maybe he didn't inhale. There was talk of womanizing Jennifer Flowers. So yes, welfare was very important to his being nominated.
No one wants to change the welfare system as badly as those who are trapped in it.
Once in office, Clinton's focus was on creating jobs for welfare mothers, but Republicans sought more punitive measures.
Let's talk about what the welfare state has created. Let's talk about the moral decay.
To curb soaring out-of-wedlock births, they proposed cutting off welfare to unwed mothers who continued to have children.
Don't feed the alligators.
In a bitter debate, a Republican congressman compared welfare recipients to animals living off handouts, while a Democrat invoked Nazi Germany.
This Republican proposal certainly isn't the Holocaust, but I'm concerned. They're coming for our children. They're coming for the poor.
Clinton vetoed
no responsibility on the Democrats, or at least you don't think that the public will perceive that the Democrats are responsible.
I mean, shutdowns are terrible, and of course there will be, families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously, but it is one of the few leveraged times we have.
The proposal certainly isn't the Holocaust, but I'm concerned. They're coming for our children. They're coming for the poor.
Clinton vetoed 2 Republican bills as too harsh. But up for re-election in 1996, he signed a third. Welfare recipients would have to find work or else.
After 2 consecutive years on welfare or 5 years over a lifetime, benefits can be cut off, whether or not the recipient has a job.
Many other benefits.
Ron Haskins, who helped draft the Republican bill, says it was a revolution in policy. Americans, no matter how poor, would no longer be guaranteed cash help from the government.
Think of a Democratic president that would sign a welfare reform bill like that. President Gore wouldn't have done it. Kennedy's would have never done it. There are many Republicans that wouldn't have done a bill as tough as the one that was passed in 1996.
There's going to be 1 million children thrust into poverty by this bill.
Peter Edelman and other Clinton administration officials resigned in protest.
Nobody has any legal right to get assistance, so therefore you're free to turn people away. And I was always clear that that spelled big, big, big trouble.
The new law was an experiment, giving individual states vast new powers to decide how to spend welfare funds.
They love experiments, don't they, ladies and gentlemen?
And who could receive them. What happened next shocked nearly everyone.
The White House announced today that federal efforts to reform welfare have worked even better than expected.
With a booming economy and plentiful jobs, welfare recipients left the rolls in droves, as many as 200,000 a month.
A lot of mothers went to work. 60% of them roughly got jobs. They earned about $8 or $9 an hour. Child poverty declined to its lowest level ever for kids in female-headed families. I mean, that's an astounding change.
Waxler took part in a welfare-to-work training program after being on public assistance for nearly 2 years. Now she supports herself.
The media generally portrayed the new program,
called
called Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF, as a success. By 2000, welfare caseloads had sunk to their lowest level in 30 years.
Anytime you allow the states to have the opportunity to set up programs that are actually going to work in their states, you're going to be much better off.
But that narrative was about to change.
Welfare reform was conceived and implemented in the mid to late 90s when the economy was booming. But that was then. This is a very different now.
With the new millennium came an economic downturn, and in 2008, the Great Recession.
American workers were laid off the job last month in numbers not seen in over 3 decades.
To make matters worse, state budgets were in free fall, and the hunt was on for new revenues. Jody Liggett worked for the Arizona state government when TANF began.
In a state like Arizona, we're not going to raise taxes on folks, if at all possible. And there is this big fat bag of money with TANF written on the outside of it. The temptation is just too great.
Using their new authority under the welfare law, states siphoned off billions in TANF money to pay for everything from pre-K programs to college scholarships.
The numbers are staggering.
In Arizona, it was foster care.
Nearly 18,000 kids are in the state system.
Arizona moved 75% of its welfare money into child protection and other services, leaving little for job training, child care, and cash assistance for the poor, the core purposes of TANF.
The flexibility in TANF and the things that states did were absolutely perfectly legal. But if you're spending less than 20% of the poverty program on poverty, that really says something about your values.
It's not as if those dollars were removed to build roads and bridges. They were used to support another important function of the safety net, and that's strengthening families. So the monies were not hijacked.
But having spent the money elsewhere, states came up short when demand for welfare spiked during the economic crash. So they changed the rules.
We saw states creating more barriers at the front end to make it harder for families to actually get on assistance. We saw states cutting time limits during a time when there was no work available, not because people didn't need assistance, but because they couldn't get the money back that they had put into other things.
Some states also reduced benefits. Last year, Starsha West, a 26-year-old single mother from Phoenix, applied for TANF for the second time in her young life. Her monthly payment, $237.
At the time, I needed it. Like, me and my kid's father had split. So at the time, I did need it. I wasn't working. I needed to take care of my children.
West also applied for food stamps and began looking for work. She and her children found housing through a local homeless shelter.
I'm grateful for me and my children to have a roof over our head. I see a lot of homeless people, a lot of homeless women with children, so it's kind of hard.
She's lucky to have gotten help. Despite having the third highest poverty rate in the nation, Arizona has moved 27,000 people off welfare since the recession, whether they had a job or not.
There is an overarching mindset that public assistance should be temporary, that it should be reserved for the most needy, and that we should be about helping people get on their way.
The effect of that mindset, nationally, is that welfare is now a shadow of its former self. 20 years ago, 68 out of every 100 poor families in the U.S. received cash assistance. Today, that number is 23. But in conservative states like Arizona and Indiana, it's 8. In Texas, 5. Louisiana, 4.
Cash assistance is dead, really dead, in more than half of the states in the country. So the consequence is big increases in extreme poverty, deep poverty, incomes that are below half the poverty line.
Today, 46 million Americans live in poverty, nearly half in deep poverty, meaning incomes of around $10,000 a year or less. With cash assistance waning, other government entitlements, like food stamps and disability pensions, have seen record enrollments. Now they're under attack as the new welfare.
The United States of America or the United States of Entitlement.
Taxpayer dollars to buy stuff at an adult store called Kiss My Lingerie.
20 years ago, Bill Clinton had high hopes for welfare reform.
After I sign my name to this bill, welfare will no longer be a political issue.
What does he think now?
I did not foresee that. I didn't foresee this wave, this Tea Party wave, that would believe one more time that poor people are the problem in America.
The former president and his wife, candidate Hillary Clinton, say his landmark law could use improvement and admit that too many who need assistance aren't getting it.
It did far more good than harm, but now, given the changed climate and the aftermath of the crash, the poorest welfare families, about 15% of the total, are worse off. And we should do something for them. And we ought to, all of us who support it should admit that.
But many conservatives still celebrate welfare reform for ending dependency and cutting rolls from 14 million to 4. Now they want to do to food stamps what was done to welfare, hand over the reins to the states. Ron Haskins says welfare reform brought needed change, but is cautious about giving states too much control of other entitlements.
I have to say that what has happened with welfare reform has caused me to reevaluate my confidence that the states will do the right thing. Because we have states that are very conservative, and they're going to spend the money where they think it should be spent, and not where you think it should be spent.
I would characterize TANF 20 years in as a bold experiment that failed. It's this expectation that states will do
Key word, experiment.
a better job, but a better job doesn't mean increasing the number of people who are in deep poverty, which is what we saw. I mean, that's what states did.
As for Starsha West, she is now off welfare and food stamps. But like many former welfare recipients, she has joined the ranks of the working poor. Her job at a daycare center pays $9 an hour, leaving her family still below the poverty line.
I'm happy, but if push comes to shove and I had to result in, turning back, then that's just something that I have to do.
But she may not be able to turn back to welfare. In July, Arizona will impose a new time limit on benefits of 1 year, the shortest in the nation. That means roughly 1,600 families could lose cash assistance, including 2,700 children.
Is that love for you or hate? Is that love for you or hate? After being beat upon, spit upon, lynched, buried, weighted down in chains and barbed wire. So, after being beat, walked upon, spit upon, lynched, buried, weighted down in chains and barbed wire, sold from one plantation to another for 3 long centuries. Now overnight you love your slave master so well that you defy God to even talk about removing them from the planet, and will kill all of his prophets and messengers if they talk about the white man is not to live forever, or that the white man is the devil, even though God says so. Don't you say so? Because I love it. Love him, mister. Love it, but go back and read. The Bible says that the devil will be destroyed and all of his followers.
Let's get into the history of the U.S. welfare system. The history of it, the origins of welfare. Let's go.
Very beginning of the welfare system was the passage of the aid to dependent mothers early in the New Deal. And you know what? It was perfectly reasonable. What did they have in mind? Frances Perkins was Secretary of Labor at that time, and she had in mind widows. Widows with small children. And they needed help. What is a more natural object of our affection?
When the stock market crashed in 1929, the world entered the Great Depression. After his election in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt instituted federal reforms to help the poor, including cash assistance for single mothers. With 20% unemployment in America, massive public works projects strengthen families by providing employment in a difficult time.
I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people.
Roads, public parks, dams and bridges were built, tying work directly to assistance. But even President Roosevelt realized that there was a limit to what the government could do.
President Roosevelt certainly said often that welfare was not intended to be for a lifetime and not intended to replace work. And to the extent that we've...
What did President Roosevelt say about welfare? One more again, for the people in the back that didn't hear it.
President Roosevelt certainly said often that welfare was not intended to be for a lifetime and not intended to replace work. And to the extent that we've gotten away from that sentiment in some of our programs, that's unfortunate.
The lessons of history, confirmed by the evidence immediately before me, show conclusively that continued dependence upon relief induces a spiritual and moral disintegration, fundamentally destructive to the national fiber. To dole out relief in this way is to administer a narcotic, a subtle destroyer of the human spirit. We must preserve not only the bodies of the unemployed from destitution, but also their self-respect, their self-reliance, and courage, and determination.
It all started out so innocently. And if I'd been alive then, I would have been in favor of it then. But it ratcheted up very slowly. Even by the end of the 1950s, the welfare rolls were small. The amounts of money were small. Welfare really was not, at that time, an attractive way to try to live.
Roosevelt remained true to his convictions and phased out emergency public projects as the economy improved. From the 1940s to the 1960s, poverty fell dramatically in the United States.
Her name was Linda Taylor, and she was identified by the Chicago Tribune in 1974 as a person who had committed welfare fraud while driving fancy cars, including a Cadillac, and very quickly after that she was given the nickname the Welfare Queen. And it was a nickname and a stereotype that really very quickly blew up.
Yeah, I think that the decline that we saw was not a legacy of slavery, because up until 1965, 85% of all black families had a man and a woman raising children. But right after the Watts riots, Cloward and Piven, two social scientists at Columbia University School of Social Work, who were socialists, and felt that in order to address poverty, we need to redistribute income. And so they wrote a paper that talked about separating work from income. And they said, well, we've got to remove the stigma. So they redefined welfare as social insurance and then later as reparations. But also, they couldn't have just done it by issuing a policy paper. The federal government, with the poverty programs, embraced that paradigm and actually set up offices in New York and Philly and major cities to recruit people in welfare. They were joined by the Black Panthers because they said that the nuclear family was Eurocentric and therefore racist. The women's movement joined in because it was patriarchal and therefore it was anti-male. Welfare replaced the father, and so then you saw exactly what Cloward and Piven predicted.
Welfare was put in place to do what? I ain't hear that. And for the people in the back that didn't hear it.
It was anti-male. Welfare replaced the father, and so then you saw exactly what Cloward and Piven predicted. This tremendous decline in marriage in the community, and as a result, then you saw the acting out coming, and next thing you know, we went from having only 15% of marriage down to 70% in less than 4 decades. In fact, Fred Siegel, in his book, The Future Once Happened Here, and he says in the early 70s, a period of just 4 years, 4 million blacks flooded into the welfare system at a time when the unemployment rate in New York was under 4% for blacks. So welfare expansion was not in response to unemployment. It was response to a leftist progressive policy.
Daniel Shore. 13 miles from Paul Bullard's home is a public housing project in familiar red brick, Perry Homes. It is like most such projects in most big cities. And cemented into the red brick are a series of public policies that work against the children of the poor. Because housing for the poor is scarce, the 1,100 apartments hold not the officially registered 6,000, but with unofficial residents, relatives, and friends, more like 8,000. Because mothers travel up to 4 hours a day to work in downtown office buildings or suburban homes, their children are left to care for each other or for themselves, and drug abuse is rampant. Because family planning measures have lagged, there are many teenage mothers.
Do you find that there is an incidence of young girls becoming pregnant?
Yes, we have a high rate of that too.
At about what age?
I used to say age 14, but I think I'm having to back up and say age 12.
Because the poor are shortchanged on education, it may take 2 years to get testing for a child with learning problems. And the Perry Homes schools have reading levels among the lowest in the city. Because Perry Homes was planned on a minimum budget, there are few places for children to play. Because of the same kind of planning, Perry Homes has no doctor, no dentist, no pharmacy. Nearby there is a well baby clinic, but no sick baby clinic. And the sick must travel 12 miles to wait for attention at Grady Memorial Hospital. And partly because of the general rule that welfare is cut off if there is a man in the house, fathers are often driven away so that mother and children can eat.
85% of the head of household is a woman, because most of the men who should be in the household, they cannot make a decent living. And of course it is better to know that a child will be fed 12 months out of the year than 3 months, which during the summer when construction work you can make a decent living.
The man in the house rule was written to prevent welfare cheating, to make sure that aid to families with dependent children would go only to families headed by mothers. But the effect of the man in the house rule is to create for children.
Now ask yourself this, the man in the house rule. Did they have a man in the house rule for these illegal migrants that they out here fighting hard for, ladies and gentlemen? Did they break up the illegal migrant family? And if they are trying to separate the illegal migrant family, what's going on in the streets, y'all? Did they fight for the black African American community the way they fighting for these illegal migrants' families? Did they separate their family, or are they keeping their family together and fighting hard for them? Let's go.
An atmosphere of investigation and surveillance.
Wow.
And thus, the welfare system in its operation turns out to be a system to make life harder for children.
The welfare system helps the disintegration of the American family. It offers money to families if the fathers will leave them and stay away, in that sense undoing the very stability of the family and taking away one of the two parents the children, of course, need. And what I have seen, I'm afraid to say, all over the country is that the legal system works against the best kind of home for these children. We don't encourage parents to be at home with the children. We don't encourage mothers to feel that they can find their destiny as mothers. We take away, in many of the most vulnerable homes, fathers from those homes. We herd foster children together in institutions rather than trying to find decent homes for them. We don't tap the resources we have in communities and with respect to older people so that they can help out vulnerable homes. We don't sanction and encourage and support in every way, morally, psychologically, and financially, the dignity and integrity of the home. And in the worst of it is that the homes that are most vulnerable are the homes that are least supported by the policies of local, state, and federal governments. And no wonder then, out of these more vulnerable neighborhoods, we get an endless cycle of troubled, delinquent, wayward youth who grow up even more and become the lawbreakers of our society. Now, I don't know how you break this cycle except by starting out with young children.
Consider daycare. You would think that certainly shows concern for children, but let's look more closely. The Perry Homes area, with its thousands of children, has only one daycare center for 107 children between the ages of 2.5 and 5. 75% of its money comes from a federal government apparently less interested in the children than in freeing welfare mothers for work, and woefully inadequate even to that end. Elsewhere in Atlanta, in schools like Cook Elementary, the state of Georgia has tried setting up daycare centers, but federal support is drying up. When we were here, there were 158 children, 6 days to 6 years old. Since then, the number has been cut back to 89. 12 other Atlanta schools have had to eliminate infants and toddlers from their daycare plans. And that will make it harder for mothers of the very young to go to work or to school. Atlanta is typical of what is happening around the country. Model daycare centers that remain models. Good as they may be, scarce as they are, such daycare centers are geared more to a work ethic than a child ethic. That has been the history of daycare in this country. Crash programs in time of emergency like war to free mothers for work, and swiftly wound down when the emergency was over. Now daycare is billed as an answer to the welfare emergency, written into legislation that would force mothers to go to work. Congress took a different view with a child development bill that would provide more comprehensive services, and not just for welfare children. President Nixon vetoed that bill as too costly, as going too far towards what he called communal control of children.
Worked with middle-class families who lack all kinds of things, not money, not social position, not professional attainment, but have a sense of estrangement, a sense of uprootedness, a sense of not belonging to any particular community, a feeling that they're at the mercy of the next job move, they're at the mercy of the next economic cycle, so to speak, that requires them to go here or there. And also, I think there's a deep and abiding sense of aloneness, which they don't know, the parents don't know whom they can talk with and whom they really trust. And I think that if children are deprived of the things they need, both physically and psychologically at a young age, that there comes a point in which they cannot be redeemed. And I would use that word redeemed in all of its psychological and spiritual implications. They become hopelessly thwarted, stymied, atrophied. The heart dies, the mind becomes filled with all of the hate or fear the child has experienced. And multiply this child by many child, and we have many sins. And multiply this enough, and I think you have national sins, not just the individual sins that we all commit from day to day, but a national failure of determination, an ethical failure, and in many respects, a slow kind of suicide, in which one generation permits another generation in significant numbers to be hurt and killed, I would say, in spirit.
Which they say they don't need a man, and then turn around and take the man to child support. And that's the result of breaking up the black family. This is what happens. We kick the man out the house. We support the lady and the kids. And then we put the man on child support, knowing he can't even get a job. So we're after the man. Black, white, green, yellow, orange. And this is what happens in the African American community when a female take a male to child support. That's the result right here. Let's go.
Just don't put your hand on him no more.
Easy divorce, set loose in the 60s, has soared to new heights and left millions of the nation's children in limbo. They're usually confused, frequently uprooted, and too often short on financial support. Government figures now put taxpayer support for other people's children at about $9.4 billion.
I think unquestionably that the willful failure to provide for children and the interstate flight to avoid supporting children is one of the greatest social problems of our times.
It was the taxpayer burden that prompted the 1975 legislation that required all states to crack down on absent parents, mostly fathers, who were behind in their court-ordered child support, for welfare in private cases, and for children born in and out of wedlock. The states responded by making it easy.
Good morning. I'd like to pay my child support. My visa, please.
In Westchester County, New York, you can charge child support to a credit card. And by making it hard, more and more delinquent fathers end up in jail.
As far as I know, he didn't pay.
The stepped-up system seemed to generate as much hostility as money, and both men and women are organizing to fight the system.
If the man not in court, then they can't do anything.
The women to insist on still stronger enforcement, the men to claim discrimination by the courts.
The judge characterizes himself as a male chauvinist, and he says he puts women up on pedestals.
That's what they do.
Success in collection
Just to get that
varies,
dollar from
and
you.
most experts say that finally it's the judge who makes the difference. In Memphis and Shelby...
Now let me ask the men out there that y'all sitting out here, jumping out y'all skin, fighting for these illegal migrants too, right? How many of these Democrats fighting for black men on this child support shit? Knowing that's a scam. God damn it. How many mofos out there fighting for black men in this child support system and other men's system? But this video is dedicated to the African American community. So how many men and how many Democrats are out there fighting for child support for black men, Even men that's doing for their kids, that's still in the system. No one ever overlooked or even thought about looking into the system of child support. How is it that men that have no trades and skills are able to support their kids, ladies and gentlemen? After he just got out of jail, he was incarcerated, they locked him up, the government fed him drugs. Don't know one in the African American community owned planes or boats. So how did the drugs get into the community? See, it was designed for the black man to be a failure and eradicated. God damn it. Because they gave him the drugs. They said they wasn't allowed in the house with the family on welfare. He had no skills. He had no education. So what did it resort to? The drugs that the government gave him. And then what happened? He got locked up. He's in the system. And the cycle continues, ladies and gentlemen. Who's the players behind it?
County Juvenile Court in Tennessee, Kenneth Turner makes a difference. He's nationally known as a judge who takes child support very seriously.
I've never been opposed for re-election. I was just re-elected to an 8-year term. I don't know what the future will bring, but I intend to serve out that 8 years, doing just what I've said I would do when I was first elected over 20 years ago, and that is enforce parents' responsibilities.
Does he have any unusual features or anything about him that could be used to identify him?
Are you a friend of his?
What's going to happen is if you don't show up in court down there, they're going to issue a warrant for you.
In Memphis, the Child Support Agency is in the juvenile courthouse, and from parent location to court appearance, Turner can stay in touch. In court, 6 referees preside for him, as he puts it, in his image. Chief Referee Curtis Person.
I think if any one of us got out of tune with that policy that's been established, which is a tough policy for strict enforcement of child support, then I think we would have to go someplace else.
Mr. Page, you've been in the courtroom now for almost an hour. You've heard what I've said to the other defendants. It all applies to you. You have an equal obligation where this child's concerned. You're going to have to keep your payments up to date. Stop coming down here. You're building a bad record. You've already had 4 complaints. Nothing is more important than taking care of your minor child.
Yes, sir. I mean, I paid it the best I could. As far as the amount that's due, I didn't think it was that much. And by my records, I thought it was $125. And I've gotten 2 different amounts. And according to,
Mr. Page, just pay it monthly like you're supposed to, and you won't have to worry about all that. You're in contempt of court. Be confined definitely to Shelby County Jail until you pay the total arrears of $285. Another payment will be due between now and the end of the month.
Investigators call these the cases that never close.
Facts.
And you do it all by yourself without any help from the father. Well, if she can work, Mr. Greer, you can work and help the child too.
If I can find a job.
Do you like to go to jail, Mr. Greer? Would you rather go to jail than pay support?
No, sir.
When you go out and do part-time work and you get money to barely make it on your own, then you've got to share some of that with your child, and you don't ever seem to want to do that. I know you've heard all these things before, Mr. Greer, because you have really been down here a lot. Far too many times.
They kick the man out the house. They come out with this welfare bullshit scam just to kick the man out the house, just to put the man on child support, just to lock the man up. That shit is illegal, man. That shit crazy, man. The gun always been pointed at the men. God damn it. At the men. God damn it. Because you see all types of races up here and colors of people that's on child support due to the welfare system.
Chief Referee Curtis Person.
The only time they seem to close is when the children finally reach the age of majority. Because these parents, that have been back to the court for 8, 10, 12, and 20 and even sometimes 30 times. These people are just going to do everything they can to avoid their responsibility where their children are concerned.
This is a $50 weekly support order for 2 minor children. It's been in this court since 1980. Mr. Clemens has apparently never paid anything through the court. For the past year, Mr. Clemens, you're $2,600 behind. Where do you work?
I work for Harsh Manufacturing. I've been out there about 4 or 5 months. I was out of work for 3 months this spring. I was out of work for over 3 months last fall. I haven't had the money.
Are you working now?
Yes, sir. And I haven't had...
Full-time?
Yes, sir.
How much money did you bring today?
How much money did I bring today?
How much do you have in your pocket?
I don't know. I got a little over $100. I just gave her 30. I gave her 60 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Clemens, the court is going to let you pay $100 today as a purge payment.
The only way that we can get at some of these people is simply by sending them to jail and saying, look, you can get out of jail if you pay this amount of money. The court has determined that you could have paid this, you should have paid it, you haven't. You're in contempt of court.
$300 a portion of your arrearage. Your payments increase from $50 to $70 semi-monthly on a catch-up plan until you pay off the balance.
So that's the question, please?
Yes, sir.
How long will I stay in jail for $300?
You have the keys to the jailhouse door in your pocket. You'll stay there until you pay $300.
All right.
Child support.
So you're going to be locked up until you still pay it. That's crazy, right? And then some states, they even suspend your license. So how you going to work if they suspend your license and you use your license to work? But we all know the economy is slow on the man. So it's designed to sink your ass.
It is not child's play here in Memphis. Judge Turner believes in jail. The jails are called Turner's Tanks, and a litany of hard luck and hurt feelings won't stay the sentence. However, these are not common criminals, and the judge says most don't stay locked up for long.
About 98% of them pay within a matter of hours. They get on the phone and call their friends or rake up the money somewhere and pay them.
Brown shoes, blue jeans, light blue shirt.
Turner says his methods are cost-effective, and collection this year will top $12 million, with a third of that going back to the state and federal governments to reimburse them for aid to dependent children. But aggressive investigators here, as elsewhere, are hard put to locate the culprits in child support cases.
I've got a warrant here on my desk for his arrest.
Are you his baby's mother? Oh, I see.
He doesn't live there. You know where he stays at?
About your child support payments, evidently what's happened. You got him behind in them?
California. When's the last time you saw him?
What's the woman's name on the other case?
And you hadn't seen him in 3 years. All right. Thank you. Probably him.
Undaunted, the child support team took out a double-page ad in the 2 daily newspapers naming the 3,200 worst offenders and asked for information about them. It got results, and they plan to do it again. Another move that shakes out and shakes up fathers in hiding is the periodic daybreak raid.
Weapons, remember our code on weapons. The only time we use them is in our own defense to protect somebody else. We don't have fleeing felons in our particular situation. Okay, assignments are made.
When the public is made aware of what we're doing, they are very appreciative. I did a TV program the other day, and the cameraman at one of our local stations asked me about our B-men. I said, what do you mean our B-men? He said, you're breaking, man. You know, the dudes that come out and knock on your door at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, get you out of bed if you hadn't made your child support payments. So it has its humorous side.
Open door.
The humor may be lost on the unsuspecting offender pulled from his house in the early morning mass arrest.
The best time to catch anyone for service of process, be it a summons or a warrant, is in the early morning hours before they have a chance to leave their place of residence.
The Sheriff's Department. Is Anthony here? Yes, sir. Huh? Yes, sir. We need to talk to him. All right, thank you, ma'am.
How you doing, man?
Anthony, we got a warrant for you here. On your child support?
A great many will turn themselves in. That's just like the results we got when we ran this large ad in the newspapers. And Lord only knows how many are paying child support because they don't want to see their names in the paper again, or who don't want our officers back out there on the doorstep at dawn.
The raids reap a courtroom full of offenders.
100% of
Election
them is
results
all
bear
black,
witness to
right?
public approval, but critics feel that
You know what I'm
arrearages
saying?
should be dropped and that frequent jailings of the depressed and oppressed constitute one more blow in these hard times. Attorney John Donald.
One of the things that we fail to take note of today is the economy. People are looking for jobs. There just aren't any jobs out here. If you look at the social, economic level of the parties coming in, you consider the fact that most of them are high school dropouts or what have you, without skills in many cases. You know, they're going to find a difficult time finding any type of employment. You will find that people will go out and, through relatives or somebody, will borrow some money to purge themselves. But the minute they borrowed that money to purge themselves, they're in debt. Once they get out, they spend the rest of their time trying to pay that money back, and they'll come back to court again on a contempt citation. And the cycle goes over and over and over. So it's not uncommon to see so many people coming before this court.
Fucked up Centrelink motherfuckers! Is he bringing out that form or what? Security guard? I'm not in the right mood at this point of time. Want them cunts to give me a house! He can't even do that, Tony Abbott! You know how frustrating that is? Yeah, well, that's fucked. That's what it is. That's fucked. You gotta put up with them cocksuckers in there. I was seeing why them cunts was stuffing my payment around. And now I've got to fucking deal with that shit. Who's gonna pay my rent? $350. Like Tony Abbott, the motherfucker? He can't even house people. Fuck that shit.